Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Ted Flint. With us today, Assemblyman Will Barclay, who serves the 124th Assembly District, which includes Oswego and Onondaga counties. Assemblyman Barclay, nice to see you.
Ted, good to be here. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm feeling pretty good about this week. This is the final week of the legislative session. That's not why I'm feeling good. I mean,
I'm feeling good about that. I think everybody should feel good about
bet,
that, particularly if we get out on time. You know, the old saying goes, Ted, the less time we're here, the less damage we can do for New York State.
Heard that.
And there's
I don't want to
probably
say
some
that.
truth to that. So no, I'm hoping. Looks like we're going to finish up on time. We're scheduled to finish on the 21st, maybe a day or two over that. But I think on a whole, we'll probably get done, this week.
Okay. Do you see any foresee of any one issue or issues that would maybe hold that up? Maybe.
Well,
extend the session?
There are several issues still being negotiated. Teacher evaluations, the governor's social justice centers that he was talking about. We're still hoping for mandate relief, whether that's going to come through or not. I haven't heard the governor talking too much as far as negotiations with both houses. So, the speaker's still holding out for minimum wage. So there's a lot of issues still kind of circulating, but my sense is some of those won't be resolved, and we'll go home without resolving those issues.
Well, let's take those one by one. Teacher evaluations. Obviously, it's controversial.
I mean, from what I've read, don't know this firsthand, but from what I've read, it sounds like they are reaching an agreement on teacher evaluations. This is, the how to release the teacher evaluations. The media, a lot of the media wanted to release on a wholesale, where the teachers' unions kind of pushed back and said, well, that's not really fair. I think it sounds like they're getting just a reasonable compromise on it, where the parents would be able to get the evaluations for their teachers, for their children, but it wouldn't be released on a widespread basis, which if they can do it over email, where the parent doesn't have to actually go into school and review it or something, where they still can get a copy of it, it seems reasonable to me. I can understand to some degree the teachers being a little bit hesitant to let it be widespread disbursement of that, because it can be misinterpreted. I think that these things probably need to be released, and the parents have all the rights to it, but widespread release, I could see where who knows what the circumstances are and under release teachers' evaluations. So hopefully, in the long and short of it, I think there will be a deal on that, and hopefully get something passed on that this week and put that issue behind us.
That's the case with most issues, and certainly the four you mentioned. I mean, there is room for compromise on all of the issues,
right.
Even minimum wage. Now, I heard a report on a local TV station here about a week ago that said basically the speaker hasn't given up on some kind of a compromise deal. Is there a tax cut bill in the Senate with which...
Well, that's the rumor. I'd be highly suspect of the idea of getting minimum wage done this week. Personally, I think it's the wrong time to do minimum wage. There's some arguments, obviously, for. There's, I think, some strong arguments against it, just because of the economics of what's going on in the state right now. It's not something that I think small businesses can really afford. I think it'll probably lead to more people getting laid off than actually helping people earn a wage that they can live on. So there is some talk about because the Senate put through a package of small business tax cuts, which I think are very important. I think we ought to get on those and not tie them to the minimum wage, but maybe a compromise could be made. But the rumor has it, if it's not done this week, we'll come back sometime later this year and maybe pass that package.
And maybe not $8.50 an hour. With the speaker's looking for $8.50, maybe $8. I've heard that.
Right.
rumor.
Well, I think that, and the real issue is indexing it. I mean, so what they've done in the bill that we passed in the Assembly, that it would just go up automatically each year as inflation goes up. So, that would really hurt New York's competitive basis. So I think that's a real thing. I don't think the initial increase, at least the one-time increase, is really that problematic. It's really the indexing going forward.
Okay. Let's discuss microstamping. This bill comes up every year. It's virtually a one-house, but it is a one-house bill. It doesn't see the light of day in the Senate, but in the Assembly it's debated.
Yeah, let's be thankful. This is a way that they're trying to ID guns. So they have a little marking that allegedly would go out of the bullet. As it goes out the gun, it would be marked so you could match the bullet with the gun. It's really unproven technology. In fact, we've had similar type technology in New York State. It's never led to any kind of solving any crime. So the real problem with it, that's obviously the biggest problem. It doesn't necessarily work. The second problem is it's a huge mandate on gun manufacturers in New York State, and one of our biggest employers upstate is Remington Arms, and they claim if you pass this bill, it's going to end up they'll move out of the state and they won't sell guns in New York State. So that's obviously very problematic. And it'd be one thing if we're making that sacrifice for a technology that worked and really could solve crimes, but there's no proof that this thing could solve any crimes.
Not
whatsoever.
one crime.
Right.
Not even one.
Right.
So how could it be worth the investment?
I don't know. I think some of my colleagues get pushed by the gun lobbying, the gun control lobbying, and they just putting anything out there to kind of attack the Second Amendment and gun rights. So
that's the ultimate aim for many of those. You think?
Yeah, I think that's really the motivation on it. Because again, if it worked, that's one thing. But again, this has not been proven technology.
As you point out correctly, that Remington employs like 1,100 people. If it cuts into their bottom line, they've already said. It's problematic.
Yeah, it's very problematic. I mean, I think they've been on the edge in New York State for some time in this type of mandate, which is a costly mandate. I don't know what the exact dollar amounts are, but it's a costly mandate to them to pull out New York State, and particularly upstate. It's not a good thing.
Let's discuss synthetic marijuana. Now, this is issues cropped up because I guess it mirrors the real thing. And more and more people are turning to that, and obviously there are dangers attached to that.
For a long time, a few things have happened this year on synthetic marijuana. This issue came to me because the Oswego County legislature was on top of this issue very early on because of, I guess, SUNY Oswego and a lot of the students up there were abusing this synthetic marijuana, and it's a real health risk. We heard from law enforcement, we heard from the medical community, we've heard from parents, all concerned about this synthetic marijuana. So we started this early in the year to try to get it outlawed. And what happened is with the synthetic marijuana, the compound could easily be changed to keep making it legal. They just had to change a little bit of the formula in the compound. All of a sudden this stuff would become legal again. So our push was trying to pass some legislation that was kind of broad-based that would catch all this synthetic marijuana under and make it all illegal so they couldn't just change the compound slightly. As a result of my lobbying, I think of others, we got the governor to act unilaterally through the health department, not making it criminalized, but putting civil penalties on anybody who actually sold this synthetic marijuana. So that's good news, and I think that's a step in the right direction. But now what we got to do is pass legislation, which we did in both the Assembly and Senate. Unfortunately, they're not the same as legislation. We got to get it so it's the same as, so we can really outlaw this synthetic marijuana. And that goes also with this bath salts. You probably heard that in the news lately, how out of control these things are. And again, it seems to me there's no reason why this stuff is legal. There's no reason why we can't reach an agreement on making it illegal. It seems like the real difference between the two houses is what kind of penalties are going to be imposed for anyone who's caught distributing or selling these two things, bath salts or synthetic marijuana.
But many times the severity of the penalties is really that's what.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it really is, and it's unfortunate because I think the more we kind of delay on this thing, the more risks that our citizens and particularly our young people have out there. Because I think a lot of people get involved in this stuff. First of all, you can consider it a gateway drug, but I think even if it's not a gateway drug, just on its own, it's extremely dangerous. Particularly the bath salts. I mean, again, you've read, there's been a lot of that in the news of people going crazy as a result of using this. So it's just kind of blows my mind we can't reach a compromise and get it done and get it off the streets.
Will that be done? We'll look at you speaking on the bill shortly. Will that be done before the end of session this week?
Yeah, geez, again, I hope so. I mean, this is one I would think would be a no-brainer, but who knows, how it's getting bogged down. The good news is really because of the governor acting unilaterally, hopefully it's moving the synthetic marijuana at least off the streets as a result of that. Even though it's not a criminal penalty, again, the civil penalty hopefully is enough of a deterrent to stop people from selling it.
All right, well, you're speaking on that bill recently. We'll take a look at that. We'll come back and comment further with Assemblyman Will Barclay.
This is a big issue that came up in my area. I represent where SUNY Oswego is, and unfortunately a lot of students apparently have been experimenting with this synthetic marijuana, and I've heard from a number of health officials, I've heard from law enforcement where it really has gotten out of control. So I want to compliment the speaker, and I would urge, or the sponsor, and I urge a yes vote on this. Thank you.
Okay. Any follow-up to that?
Well, again,
what about the medicinal? You haven't heard that argument yet.
No. Well, actually, it's funny because marijuana has really been in the forefront recently in the state. We're talking about the stop and frisk, which the governor's proposed to basically legalize marijuana in New York State, or not make it a criminal penalty. It'd only be a violation if you're caught with marijuana. We just last week debated the medical marijuana. And those are all, I think, different issues. This is really synthetic marijuana. It has a real danger to the community, which, again, I'm hearing it over and over again, particularly in my community. So I think again, this is something that I think kind of falls outside those two types of issues.
I see.
And so we got to continue to work on them. Maybe if it's not done this week, if we come back, maybe we can get some agreement on
okay.
it. Let me just say, it seems like everybody's in agreement that this should be outlawed. I haven't heard anyone saying, other than the people that sell it or I guess use it, I haven't heard anybody in the legislature ever saying this is a good thing. We should, not outlaw it.
The sole reason for having it is to get a high.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other reason.
Right. Yeah, there's no medical.
Yeah,
I haven't heard anyone saying this is a medical benefit or anything like that. And even with the medical marijuana, I think people understand that would have to be used solely for medicinal purposes, not for recreation or anything like that. So,
let's talk about Dairy Day and agriculture in general. The #1 industry here in New York State, and dairy a large component of that. We held an event recently. The conference did in a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, it was great. It was actually last week, and it was a wonderful event. First of all, June is Dairy Month. I don't know in New York State if you knew that or not.
Oh yeah.
And as you mentioned, agriculture is our #1 industry in New York State. So this was a way that we could kind of showcase, particularly dairy industry, and it's first of all, milk producing is huge. Milk, drinking milk is a huge business, but all the spin-off from milk obviously goes into everything, and you've seen it grow, whether it's the Greek yogurts or the cheese in my area. They're producing a lot of cheese. So this is really, I think, a wonderful event that we have in the well. They serve ice cream, obviously. They have cheeses, yogurts. So it's kind of a fun event. They had all the dairy princesses there. We had who was the football player now?
Joe Morris.
Joe Morris, a Syracuse graduate. I can't believe it slipped my mind. Terrible to say. So Joe Morris was there speaking on behalf of the dairy industry and the health benefits of eating dairy. So it was really it's a great event. We do it every year, and it usually draws huge crowds.
Oh, it sure does.
To the well.
You get people sample ice cream. It draws them from all over.
But what's wonderful about it really does showcase this industry and the hard work and dedication that people are involved in dairy farms. It's not an easy life, and obviously with milk prices not as high as they could be or should be, it's a very challenging business right now. So the more attention we can bring to it, I think the better.
I've often wondered if it's the state's top industry, and it is, why doesn't the state then commit more revenue to helping that?
I think that's a very good question.
$21 billion education. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but what's a paltry sum compared for agriculture, isn't it?
Well, I think a lot of people, first of all, are naive, not realizing that it is the #1 industry we have in New York State. I think, secondly, we live in a very diverse state where some of my downstate colleagues maybe don't understand the importance of agriculture, or even understand where their food comes from. I think they just see it shows up in the grocery store and gets on their table. So, sometimes I don't know if that motivation and the attention is there. And again, that's why it's a good reason to have this Dairy Day, because it really does bring recognition to the industry, and hopefully when we have those types of bills, it's one thing to help subsidize a business, another thing just to get
through tax and
government off their backs. I think that's really what we can do, or not put more obligations on them. As you know, a couple of years ago they were trying to do that Farm Labor Act, which would have been a killer. Fortunately, that hasn't come up again this year, but would have been a killer for agriculture in New York State. So.
Okay, about a minute left. Let's. You mentioned mandate relief a few minutes back. I haven't heard anything about mandate relief. Do you foresee an 11th hour package that you guys are going to have to vote on Thursday night?
Unfortunately, it's something that we always said, if we're going to pass the tax cap, we have to provide some mandate relief, both for localities and for school districts. And this year, obviously, the school budgets kind of went through without too much of a problem that we heard. We heard that Armageddon was going to happen with this tax cap. Now, I'm not to say that that's not going to happen at some time, but obviously trying to get mandate relief has been very challenging to get through. So let's keep working on it. It's a work in progress, and hopefully we'll be able to get through maybe later this year, or certainly next session. We got to push for it.
That's the last word. Assemblyman Barclay, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Assembly Calendar. I'm Ted Flint.